In the world of ultra-luxury naval architecture, the billionaires who buy superyachts only care about the surface. They care about the Italian marble in the master suite, the infinity pools and the helicopter pads. But when you put a 3,000-ton piece of steel into the ocean doesn't care about marble. The ocean wants to tear the ship apart. To make a 70-meter yacht glide through a massive storm without spilling a single drop of champagne on the dining table, you have to conquer hydrodynamics. You have to install massive, multi-ton gyroscopic stabilizers in the belly of the ship, spinning at thousands of revolutions per minute, generating immense centrifugal force to actively fight the waves. It requires millions of lines of proprietary code to balance that violent kinetic energy. I spent my entire life learning how to tame the violent, unpredictable nature of the sea. I just never realized that the most destructive, unpredictable storm of my life was quietly brewing right inside my own home. My name is Gideon. I'm 39 years old, and I am a lead naval architect and marine hydrodynamicist. 6 years ago, I married Ilara. Ilara was a high-end, luxury yacht broker. She operated in the pristine, sun-drenched world of the French Riviera, Monaco, and Miami. She wore wide-brimmed hats, drank Dom Perignon, and sold floating palaces to Russian oligarchs and tech billionaires. I was the quiet, obsessive engineer who spent 14 hours a day in dark, echoing shipyards, smelling like diesel and welding flux. We were opposites, but I thought we were the perfect ecosystem. I built the impossible machines, and she sold the dream. For 5 grueling years, I poured every ounce of my personal savings, my sanity, and my genius into my absolute magnum opus. I called it Project Leviathan. It wasn't just a hull design. I had invented a revolutionary active foil and gyroscopic stabilization algorithm. My software predicted the exact frequency of incoming waves and preemptively adjusted the multi-ton gyros with zero latency. It made a 70-meter yacht absolutely physically immune to pitching and rolling. It was the absolute holy grail of the global maritime industry. Major European shipyards were spending tens of millions of dollars trying to replicate it. The patents and the proprietary source code were conservatively appraised at $30 million. I promised Ilara this technology was our empire. I told her that when we licensed the code to a major Dutch shipyard, we would be set for life. She would be the queen of the maritime world. But Ilara didn't want to build a kingdom with an engineer. She looked at my grease-stained hands and my exhausted, salt-weathered face, and she decided she wanted the $30 million without having to share the deck with the mechanic. And she found a corporate pirate who was more than willing to help her hijack my ship. The buoyancy of our marriage started to fail when Ilara's brokerage signed an exclusive contract with a massive, aggressive luxury shipyard. The CEO of that shipyard was a man named Vance. Vance was 45 years old and the absolute poster boy for maritime arrogance. He couldn't read a nautical blueprint to save his life. He was a ruthless venture capitalist who bought up heritage shipyards, hollowed out their engineering departments, slapped his aggressive logo on the hulls, and presented himself to the world as a maritime visionary. He wore custom linen suits, flew a private seaplane, and treated brilliant naval architects like disposable dock workers. Suddenly, Ilara was spending all her time at Vance's glass tower headquarters in Miami, claiming she was restructuring his global launch strategy for a new mega-yacht. The red flags didn't just quietly appear, they sounded like a breach alarm on a submarine. First, the profound, unapologetic disrespect. Ilara started actively belittling my life's work. "Gideon, you need to wake up," she scoffed one evening, tossing her $5,000 handbag onto my pristine drafting table. "Vance manages a billion-dollar maritime portfolio. He dictates the culture of the Riviera. You're just a guy sitting in a dry dock playing with metal spinning tops. You lack corporate vision. Nobody cares about your gyroscopic math, they care about the brand." Second, the intense, unnatural secrecy regarding her devices. Alara changed the passcode on her phone and her laptop. She started taking crisis logistics calls in her car, sitting in the driveway with the engine running for 40 minutes before coming inside. Third, and by far the most terrifying, was her sudden, highly specific interest in my server architecture. Alara, a woman who absolutely loathed the noise of my testing facility, suddenly asked exactly how the proprietary stabilization code communicated with the physical gyroscopes and if the master repository was stored on an encrypted flash drive. When a yacht broker suddenly asks for the master encryption keys to a $30 million hydrodynamic algorithm, you don't answer the question. You lock down the bulkheads and check for a leak.
When you build proprietary AI technology that controls the physical safety of a 3,000-ton vessel, you don't rely on a standard Wi-Fi password. My entire shipyard network was routed through a custom hardware firewall that silently logged every single byte of unauthorized data moving across the local area network. One Saturday night, while Alara was supposedly at a weekend VIP retreat in the Hamptons, my phone vibrated with a critical priority alert from the shipyard. Someone was actively attempting to execute a mass file transfer from my secure development server to an unauthorized external cloud locker. I didn't storm out of my house and speed to the yard. I simply isolated the connection, artificially slowed the transfer speed to a crawl to buy myself time, and mirrored her laptop screen directly to my home monitors. She had her encrypted messaging app open, communicating directly with Vance. I didn't just find an affair. I found a premeditated, multi-million-dollar maritime heist. Vance wrote, "My chief engineers just reviewed the compressed simulation code you sneaked out last week. They are completely losing their minds. The stabilization logic is 10 years ahead of anything Lursen or Oceanco has. If we install this on my new 70-meter flagship and launch it in the Monaco Yacht Show next month, the Saudi royals will buy 5 hulls on the spot. Have you secured the master source code yet?" Alara replied, her words dripping with a casual, horrifying cruelty that made the blood freeze in my veins. "I'm copying the master repository from his server right now. The idiot actually thinks I care about his stupid spinning metal. Tomorrow, when he goes to his naval symposium in Seattle, I'll take the master hard drive. We'll compile the code into your yacht, launch it in Monaco, and I'll serve him with divorce papers the morning after. He has no money to fight your corporate lawyers. He's just a sad, grease-stained boat mechanic, Vance. We are going to rule the ocean." Vance responded, "You're a visionary, my love. The boat mechanic is going to fund our entire empire." I sat alone in the dark, staring at the glowing monitor as my entire reality shattered into a million pieces. My wife of 6 years was sleeping with a corporate parasite. Together, they were actively plotting to steal 5 years of my blood, sweat, and genius, intentionally hijack my masterpiece, launch it on the biggest stage in the world, and leave me utterly destroyed. They thought I was just a sad, naive boat mechanic. They didn't understand the level of absolute, unmitigated kinetic destruction a master naval architect is capable of coding.
If you want to destroy a fraudulent yacht builder, you don't drill a hole in his hull. You let him steal your code. You let him build a $100 million ship. You let him invite the wealthiest billionaires on Earth aboard. And then you use the ocean against him. I didn't confront her. If I yelled and locked the server, Vance's army of corporate lawyers would bury me in injunctions, claim they had a verbal contract to the design, and tie me up in court for a decade until I went bankrupt. I needed them to steal the code. I needed Vance to proudly stand on the deck of his mega-yacht in front of thousands of investors and claim my genius as his own. So, I went to work on the firmware. I took the true uncompiled master source code, encrypted it with a 256-bit key, and moved it to an air-gapped hard drive that I locked in a bank vault. Then, I turned my attention to the cloned code they were planning to steal. To Vance's highly paid, arrogant software engineers, the cloned code I left on the server would look absolutely flawless. It would compile perfectly. When they ran digital simulations of the yacht in rough seas, it would perform beautifully. When they installed it on the actual ship, the 5-ton gyroscopes would spin up and stabilize the vessel perfectly. But deeply embedded in the absolute foundational math of the active counter-roll execution protocol, buried so deep in the hex code that no QA tester on Earth would ever find it, I wrote a logic bomb. I didn't use a timer. I used an acoustic trigger. Every superyacht is equipped with a massive, deafening pneumatic air horn, specifically a Kahlenberg multi-trumpet horn. I knew Vance's ego. I knew that at the absolute climax of the Monaco Yacht Show presentation, he would hit the horn to signal his triumph to the entire harbor. I coded the gyroscopic hive mind so that if the microphone sensors picked up the exact specific acoustic frequency of that Kahlenberg horn for more than 3 seconds, the payload would execute. It wouldn't shut the gyroscopes down, it would violently invert their phase. Instead of spinning to counter the natural motion of the waves, the 5-ton gyroscopes would instantly synchronize to amplify it. The massive kinetic energy of the spinning steel would forcefully throw the 3,000-ton yacht into a brutal 30-degree list. I finalized the patch. I left the cloned code on my server. The next morning, I packed my bags for the convention in Seattle. I kissed Ilara goodbye. "Have a great trip, Gideon," she smiled, handing me my coffee. "Take care of the yard, Ilara," I replied, looking her dead in the eyes. "You know that project is my masterpiece." "I'll guard it with my life," she promised. I drove away. I let her bring the thieves into my sanctuary. I let them steal the bomb. Now, they just had to sound the horn. I didn't go to Seattle. I flew straight to the offices of the most aggressive, ruthless maritime and intellectual property litigator in the industry. I sat down at his mahogany conference table. I handed him my original time-stamped code logs. I handed him the high-definition security footage and the crystal-clear iCloud transcripts of Ilara and Vance explicitly conspiring to steal the files and the proprietary algorithms. And finally, I handed him the official, federally approved patent documentation for the Leviathan stabilization software, which I had secretly expedited and secured exclusively in my own name a month prior. My wife and her accomplice are going to illegally install stolen, patented maritime technology on a 70-meter superyacht and launch it at the Monaco Yacht Show next Saturday, I told my lawyer calmly. My lawyer reviewed the documents, read the chat logs, and slowly smiled like a shark smelling blood in the water. Gideon, utilizing stolen, patented maritime safety software to solicit hundreds of millions of dollars from international investors is massive, willful federal fraud. But beyond that, installing uncertified stolen code on a commercial vessel violates massive international maritime laws. If he launches this ship, we won't just sue him. The International Maritime Organization and Interpol will literally liquidate his entire corporate empire. "Draft the paperwork," I said, "but do not file the injunction yet. Do not stop the show. Let him put the boat in the water. I want him to put his face on it in front of the whole world." On Wednesday afternoon, my phone notified me that my server had been breached. Through the hidden cameras, I watched Ilara happily download the rigged files onto an encrypted drive. She left a white envelope containing divorce papers on my drafting table and walked out. They were laughing. They thought they had just executed the perfect, untouchable heist, but they had no idea they had just installed a digital capsizing protocol into their own flagship. Saturday evening, live from Port Hercules, Monaco, the undisputed center of global wealth. I sat in my dark hotel room, watching the global maritime broadcast in high definition. The live stream had over 1 million viewers. Vance was hyping up the crowd, pacing back and forth across the massive teak aft deck of his new 70-meter flagship, absolutely dripping with unearned confidence. The camera panned to the VIP section, and I saw Ilara standing there, holding a glass of champagne, looking incredibly proud, believing she had just secured a billion-dollar empire. The deck was covered in crystal glasses, caviar stations, and 50 of the wealthiest investors on Earth. "Ladies and gentlemen, your highnesses," Vance announced into his microphone, his voice oozing with arrogance. "Tonight, we redefine the ocean. Thanks to my brilliant engineering team, I present to you a vessel that has conquered the waves, the most stable, perfect yacht ever built." The crowd applauded. Vance smiled arrogantly and walked over to the captain's ceremonial control podium on the deck. "To announce our arrival to the world," Vance grinned. He reached down and slammed his hand onto the massive pneumatic horn button. The deafening, deep bass roar of the Kallenberg air horn echoed across the entire Monaco harbor. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. I looked at the screen. I knew the math. My logic bomb executed. Deep in the belly of the ship, the 5-ton titanium gyroscopes didn't shut down. They violently, forcefully inverted their phase. On the live global broadcast, right in front of the most elite crowd on Earth, the magic violently shifted. Instead of floating perfectly flat, the immense kinetic energy of the spinning flywheels slammed into the hull. The entire 3,000-ton superyacht violently and aggressively lurched into a massive 30-degree list to the port side. It was absolute, instantaneous chaos. Gravity took over. The elite guests didn't just stumble, they were violently thrown across the teak deck. Tables of caviar, crystal champagne flutes, and expensive floral arrangements went sliding and smashing into the glass bulkheads. Vance, in his pristine white suit, completely lost his footing. He shrieked, sliding across the wet deck, desperately grabbing onto a polished steel railing to keep from plummeting directly into the Mediterranean Sea. "What the hell is happening?" a terrified Russian oligarch screamed, clinging to a lounge chair as the yacht groaned under the immense artificial stress. In the VIP section, Ilara was thrown against a bulkhead. Her champagne soaked her designer dress. She scrambled on her hands and knees, her face turning the color of wet concrete, looking around in absolute, unadulterated horror. "Turn it off! Cut the engines! Stop the stabilizers!" Vance screamed into his radio, totally unhinged, dangling from the rail. "We can't!" his captain screamed back over the PA system. "We're completely locked out! The system is overriding manual control!" The yacht sat there in the middle of the harbor, tilted at a terrifying, sickening angle, groaning loudly. The elite crowd wasn't cheering, they were screaming, demanding to be evacuated. The live stream chat completely broke. 1 million people had just watched a CEO nearly capsize his own flagship vessel on live television. I took a slow, deeply satisfying sip of my coffee, smiled at the frozen live stream, and texted my lawyer, "Abandon ship." You cannot untilt a 70-meter superyacht full of terrified billionaires on a global broadcast. The fallout was an absolute, unmitigated, scorched earth massacre. The video of the yacht violently listing and billionaires sliding across the deck went viral globally within minutes. By Sunday morning, Vance was the biggest laughingstock in the history of the maritime industry. The wealthy investors who had placed deposits for new hulls immediately pulled their money and filed massive lawsuits against him for gross negligence, fraud, and endangering their lives. But the real fatal blow came from the authorities. Because Vance had illegally installed uncertified stolen stabilization software that directly compromised the physical safety of a commercial vessel, the Monaco Maritime Police and Interpol raided the ship. They evacuated the guests and immediately impounded the yacht. Days later, based on the dossier my lawyer submitted, Vance was indicted for massive corporate fraud and international maritime endangerment. His shipyard empire collapsed, and he was facing 10 years in a federal penitentiary. Ilara's life was vaporized. Vance, realizing he was facing total ruin, immediately blamed her. He told investigators that she was a rogue broker who had supplied him with the stolen malicious code without his knowledge. He threw her overboard to save himself. I called her from a hotel room in Monaco, sobbing so hard she was hyperventilating. "Gideon, please, the authorities are here. Vance dumped me. The boat nearly flipped over. You have to tell them you made a mistake with the code. Please, I have nothing." "I didn't make a mistake, Ilara," I said calmly, leaning back in my drafting chair. "I gave you exactly what you stole. You just forgot to do your hydrodynamic stress tests. I read your chat logs, by the way. Check your email. You've been served with a federal IP lawsuit. Enjoy the Riviera." I hung up and blocked her number. During our divorce settlement, she had absolutely zero leverage. Because she was facing criminal charges for corporate espionage and grand larceny against me, the judge awarded me 100% of the marital assets and denied her any alimony. She walked away with millions in legal debt and an international felony.
It's been almost 3 years since that chaotic launch in Monaco. After the dust finally settled and the lawsuits were paid out, I licensed the real, fully functioning, flawless source code for Project Leviathan. I didn't sell it to a flashy venture capitalist. I sold the exclusive rights to a legendary, highly respected Dutch shipyard, a company that actually understands naval architecture, respects the physics, and treats its engineers like true partners. I made enough money from that single contract to buy my own independent marine design firm, hire a full team of hydrodynamicists, and my business has never been better. Last I heard, Ilara avoided a long prison sentence by taking a plea deal, but she is completely blacklisted from the luxury yachting and PR industries globally. She is currently working at a dinghy rental shack on a public beach, handing out life jackets for minimum wage, knowing every single day that she voluntarily threw away her golden ticket to the absolute top of the industry. Vance, completely bankrupt and ruined, is currently serving a 6-year sentence for maritime fraud. He has no shipyard, no bespoke suits, and definitely no super yachts. If there is a lesson to be learned here, it's a simple one. Never try to hijack a ship if you don't know the architect who wrote the stabilization code. If your partner thinks they can steal your hard work, push you into the shadows, and take the captain's wheel for themselves, don't try to pull the plug. Don't fight them for the server. Smile. Hand them the flash drive. Let them build their massive ship, and let them confidently sail out in front of the cameras. And right when they think they've conquered the ocean, just sound the horn and let the physics take exactly what they deserve. Thanks for listening to my story. If you enjoyed this one, drop a like, hit subscribe, and let me know in the comments, what's the most embarrassing technological failure you've ever witnessed? Stay sharp, trust the math, and always, always encrypt your source code.